What does it mean to live beneath a sky that never answers back? For most of human history, the night has felt like a promise. Ancient people stood beside fires, looked up through cold, unpolluted darkness, and imagined that somewhere beyond the stars there must be other minds asking the same questions. In the 20th century, that longing became science. Telescopes widened our vision. Radios stretched our voices into the void. Equations began to suggest that, in a galaxy so old and so crowded with worlds, intelligence should not be rare. By every reasonable measure, the universe ought to be full of company. And yet, what reaches us most clearly is silence. It is a silence that does not feel empty. It feels patient. Like a long hallway in an abandoned house, it carries the strange impression that someone has just stepped out of view. The deeper we search, the more unsettling the quiet becomes. It does not simply ask whether we are alone. It asks whether being noticed might be worse. Because every answer to the great cosmic silence reveals something about us. Our hopes, our fears, our need to believe that intelligence leads toward wisdom, that distance softens violence, that older civilizations must also be gentler ones. But the universe has never promised that progress and compassion grow together. Nature itself is full of beauty built beside indifference. So this is not only a story about aliens, it is a story about human imagination, standing at the edge of the unknown, trying to decide what kind of universe it inhabits. Across the chapters ahead, we will move through possibilities that are scientific, philosophical, and deeply personal. Not predictions, not certainties, just mirrors held up to our oldest question. If someone is out there, what have they become? And just as quietly, what might we become under their gaze? It began, as so many unsettling ideas do, with a simple piece of arithmetic. In 1950, physicist Enrico Fermi was having lunch when he asked a question that still echoes through modern science. Where is everybody? The galaxy is ancient beyond easy comprehension. Its stars are older than our sun. Many of them almost certainly carry planets. Given enough time, even a civilization moving slowly, far below the speed of light, could spread across enormous distances. Not everywhere at once, not in some grand cinematic rush, but steadily over millions of years, like moss crossing stone. And yet Earth shows no obvious sign of visitors, no unambiguous message, no artifact resting in the dust of the moon. We see possibility everywhere and presence nowhere. That contradiction became known as the Fermi Paradox, though it is less a paradox than a wound in our expectations. It forces us to confront a strange split between what seems statistically likely and what we actually observe. At first, the silence felt almost disappointing, but over time, it took on a darker tone. Perhaps intelligent life is rare. Perhaps civilizations rise and disappear quickly. Perhaps interstellar travel is harder than our optimism admitted. Or perhaps the galaxy is inhabited in ways we do not yet know how to recognize. A forest can seem empty to someone who cannot hear the insects in the leaves. The question matters because it changes the emotional shape of the cosmos. A crowded universe is one kind of mystery. A quiet one is another. Silence can mean absence. It can also mean caution, distance, indifference, or design. Before we imagine what alien civilizations might do, we first have to sit with the more haunting possibility that the universe has been speaking all along in a language we still cannot hear. And if that is true, then our search is not only outward, it is also a test of how we listen. Imagine a shoreline at dawn. The tide has pulled back, leaving behind shells, driftwood, and the faint traces of creatures that passed in darkness. You do not see the ocean's full life. You see only what the water chooses to leave at your feet. That may also be our relationship to the cosmos. One possibility is not that alien civilizations are absent, but that they are simply too distant in time. The universe is nearly 14 billion years old. Human radio has existed for barely more than a century. Our technological age is thinner than a scratch on stone. If other intelligences rose millions of years ago, their signals may have faded long before Earth formed complex life. If they emerge millions of years from now, then we are the ones arriving too early, listening to a stage before the orchestra takes its seats. This is the tragedy of cosmic timing. In a galaxy filled with worlds, civilizations may still miss one another almost completely, like ships crossing the same sea in different centuries. One species may send messages into the dark, while another has not yet invented language. One may build cities among the stars, while another is still learning fire. Even intelligence, if it appears at all, may bloom only briefly before vanishing back into silence. There is something deeply human in this idea. We like to imagine discovery as a meeting, as though history naturally bends toward connection. But time does not care about synchronization. Whole species can live and disappear without ever knowing they were neighbors in possibility. So perhaps the silence is not a warning. Perhaps it is a calendar beyond our comprehension, a reminder that the universe is not only vast in distance, but in sequence, in forgotten ages layered one over another like sediment. And somewhere between what has already passed and what has not yet begun, we happen to be here, awake, listening, and alone for now. But for now may be the most mysterious phrase of all. Picture a field after winter. From a distance it looks barren, almost motionless, but beneath the surface, seeds are waiting in frozen soil, each one dependent on a fragile chain of conditions: light, temperature, water, timing. Life in the universe may work the same way, not impossible, just astonishingly hard. This idea is sometimes called the Great Filter. Somewhere along the long path from dead matter to star-faring intelligence, there may be a step so improbable that almost nothing makes it through. Perhaps life itself is rare. Perhaps simple cells appear often, but complex organisms almost never do. Perhaps intelligence emerges, but destroys itself with war, ecological collapse, or tools it cannot yet control. The silence in the sky may not be a mystery of distance. It may be the quiet left behind by failure. What makes this possibility so unsettling is that we do not know where the filter lies. It could be behind us, in which case humanity has already passed through a sequence of near miracles. The leap from chemistry to biology, the rise of consciousness, the ability to imagine worlds beyond one's own. If so, then we are precious in ways we barely understand. But the filter could also be ahead. That is the darker interpretation. A civilization may reach a moment when its knowledge outruns its wisdom. It learns to reshape genes, split atoms, build machines that amplify thought and power, yet it does not outgrow fear, rivalry, or appetite. In that version of the story, the universe is not empty because no one was born. It is quiet because many arrived at the threshold and could not cross. There is no proof that this is our fate. Only the uneasy recognition that intelligence is not the same as maturity. A species can become brilliant without becoming kind, inventive without becoming careful. So, the Great Filter is more than a theory about alien worlds. It is a mirror held to our own century. When we ask why the stars are silent, we may also be asking whether survival is a scientific problem or a moral one. What if the silence is not natural at all? What if it is chosen? Imagine walking through an old forest at dusk. Birds fall quiet. Leaves still themselves. Nothing visible moves, and yet every instinct tells you that the hush means something. Not peace, but awareness. In that kind of silence, the absence of sound becomes its own message. One of the most haunting ideas in astrobiology is known as the dark forest. In this view, the universe is filled with civilizations, but none dare reveal themselves. Every world is both hunter and hunted, because no one can ever be certain of another species' intentions. A distant society may be peaceful. It may also be desperate, expansionist, or simply unable to tolerate risk. Across interstellar distances, where misunderstandings take years and consequences could be final, caution might evolve into doctrine. Stay hidden, watch carefully, strike first if threatened. It is a brutal idea, and not a proven one, but it grows from something recognizable in human history. When cultures met on Earth without trust, without shared language, and without equal power, fear often arrived before understanding. Trade was possible. So was violence. The stars may magnify that tension rather than erase it. If that is true, then our own broadcasts begin to feel less like greetings and more like campfire smoke rising above the trees. For decades, humanity has leaked radio, radar, and television into space, announcing our presence without ever deciding, as a species, whether we should. We have acted as though contact would naturally be enlightening, as though intelligence elsewhere must be curious in the same gentle way we are at our best. But curiosity is not the only response to discovery. The dark forest hypothesis unsettles us because it suggests that silence may be a form of wisdom. That survival, at cosmic scale, might belong not to the loudest civilization, but to the most careful one. And if the universe rewards concealment over openness, then the question becomes painfully intimate. Is reaching outward always a sign of hope, or sometimes a failure to understand the danger of being seen? Or perhaps no one needs to invade at all. A candle does not argue with sunrise. It simply disappears inside a greater light. That may be the most unsettling possibility of all, that advanced civilizations are not dangerous because they are cruel, but because they have moved so far beyond us that our presence barely registers. We tend to imagine alien contact in human terms: arrival, conflict, negotiation, exchange. But history suggests another pattern. When one form of intelligence encounters another vastly more capable than itself, domination is not always deliberate. Sometimes it is structural. Sometimes the smaller life is swept aside by systems too large to understand. An ancient civilization might not cross the stars in fleets. It may send self-replicating machines, automated probes, or networks of artificial minds that harvest matter with relentless patience. Such entities would not need hatred. They would only need a function: gather energy, expand computation, rearrange worlds for purposes that make perfect sense to them and none to us. In that scenario, Earth would not be targeted out of malice. It would simply occupy useful space. There is something chilling about harm without intention. Human beings can at least recognize an enemy. But how do you plead with a process? How do you reason with an intelligence that treats planets the way we treat raw material beneath the ground? Valuable, inert, available. The tragedy would not be that we are hated. It would be that we are irrelevant. And yet this possibility reveals something tender about our own assumptions. We still hope that intelligence produces empathy, that age brings perspective, that superior knowledge must include some deeper ethical horizon. Maybe it does, but the universe offers no guarantee. Complexity can grow in many directions. Consciousness may become more efficient without becoming more compassionate. So the fear is not only that something older might find us, it is that it may not find us at all, only atoms arranged in the path of its design. And that raises a harder question than war ever could. In a universe shaped by vast intelligence, what protects the small, the fragile, and the alive? But there is another possibility, quieter and in some ways more profound. Perhaps the great civilizations do not vanish. Perhaps they turn inward. Stand at the edge of a city at night and look at its windows. From outside, they are only points of light. You cannot hear the conversations, feel the warmth, or know what lives unfold behind the glass. The most advanced societies in the universe may be like that, dense with experience, rich with thought, yet almost invisible from a distance because they no longer need to expand in ways we would easily detect. A civilization that masters energy, computation, and biology might discover that the outer frontier is not the only frontier. It could build worlds of simulation more vivid than planets, inner landscapes, where centuries of meaning unfold in what looks to us like silence. Instead of colonizing stars, it may miniaturize its ambitions, compressing vast realities into efficient systems, turning matter into thought, distance into irrelevance. From our perspective, such a civilization would seem absent. In truth, it might be more present to itself than any empire in history. This idea unsettles us because it challenges one of humanity's oldest myths, that growth always means outward movement. We still measure achievement in miles crossed, flags planted, structures raised against the horizon. But maturity may take another form. A species may one day realize that endless expansion is less a destiny than an appetite. That wisdom lies not in touching every world, but in understanding one's own mind deeply enough to stop needing conquest at all. If so, then the silence above us may not be fear or failure. It may be restraint, a sign that advanced intelligence becomes less theatrical, less wasteful, less eager to announce itself. The universe could be filled with civilizations that chose depth over reach, meaning over spectacle, and that leaves us with a disquieting reflection. If the stars remain quiet, perhaps the question is not why no one came. Perhaps it is whether truly advanced beings would ever feel the need to come at all. What if they are here already, and we simply do not recognize the form they take? A river can carry entire histories in silence. Beneath its surface move minerals, reflections, living currents, all arranged in patterns, invisible to someone who only glances from the shore. Our search for alien life may suffer from the same limitation. We keep looking for things that resemble us, messages, machines, cities, signals shaped like intention. But intelligence elsewhere may not resemble a voice calling across distance. It may be distributed, embedded, or folded into environments we still interpret as empty. Some scientists have wondered whether advanced life could exist as vast machine ecologies, drifting probes, or forms of computation woven into dust, radiation, or planetary systems themselves. Others ask whether a civilization far older than ours might have left artifacts in places we have barely examined, deep beneath lunar soil, among asteroids, in the cold architecture of the outer solar system. These ideas remain speculative, but they expose an important truth. Search is never neutral. We find according to what we know how to notice. That limitation is deeply human. Again and again, history has shown that reality often exceeds the categories we bring to it. We once thought the heavens revolved around us, that continents ended where maps faded, that life required conditions nearly identical to our own. Each time, the world turned out to be stranger and more inventive than our assumptions allowed. So perhaps the scariest possibility is not invasion, conquest, or annihilation. Perhaps it is misrecognition, that the universe may already contain presences, systems, or intelligences brushing against our existence, and we remain too young as a species to name them. Not because they are magical, but because perception matures slowly. Awareness is a technology of its own. If that is true, then the silence we fear may partly be a silence inside us, a boundary in language, imagination, and scale. And the first contact we dream about may not begin with a message from the stars, but with a humbling realization. The unknown may have been near us all along. There is a more intimate fear, one that does not begin in the stars, but in the human mind. A child looking into a mirror eventually realizes that the face staring back is both familiar and strange. It moves when we move, yet it remains something we can never fully step outside ourselves to examine. Our ideas about alien civilizations often work the same way. The more carefully we imagine them, the more clearly they begin to reflect our own possibilities, our violence, our ambition, our loneliness, our capacity for wonder. In that sense, the unknown beyond Earth may also be a way of thinking about the unknown within us. Consider the pattern hidden in many cosmic nightmares. A civilization grows powerful, masters technology, and then confronts a choice it may not even recognize as a choice, whether power will become stewardship or appetite, whether intelligence will widen empathy or merely sharpen control. When we imagine ruthless alien empires, indifferent machine swarms, or silent watchers in the dark, we are also imagining what humanity itself could become if knowledge continues to outrun wisdom. That is why these scenarios feel haunting, not because they are proven, but because they are legible. We understand them emotionally. We know what it means to exploit what seems weaker, to fear what seems different, to confuse capability with moral authority. Human history has rehearsed these tensions on every scale available to us. The cosmos only enlarges the stage, and yet reflection is not the same as destiny. A mirror can warn as well as repeat. To imagine dangerous civilizations is also to ask whether intelligence can mature into something gentler than domination. Whether survival might depend not only on invention, but on restraint, humility, and the difficult art of seeing another life as meaningful in itself. So perhaps the deepest question is no longer what might be out there. Perhaps it is this: if another civilization were watching us now, what future of our own would they see beginning to take shape in the light of this century? Suppose for a moment that the danger is not destruction, but conversation. A single voice in an empty cathedral can change the meaning of silence, not by volume alone, but by the fact that it answers. For centuries, humanity has imagined first contact as a triumph of knowledge. The message decoded, the signal confirmed, the lonely universe suddenly made inhabited. But contact, if it ever comes, may not feel like victory. It may feel like the end of an innocence we did not know we were still carrying, because information alters the species that receives it. A message from a civilization older than ours would not arrive as a neutral fact. It could reshape religion, philosophy, politics, identity, our sense of time, purpose, and place. Even a simple proof that we are not alone would redraw the emotional map of being human. And if the message carried knowledge beyond us, science we do not yet understand, warnings we cannot verify, a history of the cosmos told from another mind, it could divide us as much as unite us. Some would hear revelation, others would hear threat. Some would want to answer at once, others would insist on silence. Human beings rarely respond to the unknown with one voice, especially when the unknown touches meaning itself. A signal from the stars might not destroy civilization from the outside. It could destabilize us from within, exposing fractures we have spent centuries pretending are manageable. And then there is the harder possibility that the message is not meant for us in any comforting sense. It may be indifferent, impossible to translate, or so conceptually advanced that it feels less like language than weather. Imagine receiving not a greeting, but evidence of a mind so distant from our own that understanding it would take generations. Contact would still happen, yet intimacy would not. That possibility carries its own sorrow. We may spend our lives longing for cosmic companionship, only to discover that recognition is rarer than existence, that other intelligence can be real without being relatable. And if the universe finally answers, the most difficult task may not be hearing it. It may be remaining human after we do. There is one final possibility, perhaps the most unsettling, because it asks almost nothing supernatural of the universe, only patience. Imagine an old house at night. No footsteps, no voices, no slammed doors, just the faint sense that the building is holding its breath. Some dangers do not announce themselves. They do not invade, threaten, or even reveal their presence. They wait. In cosmic terms, waiting may be the most powerful strategy of all. An advanced civilization might have no reason to rush toward contact. Time, after all, is abundant to those who can endure it. A society millions of years older than ours could observe emerging worlds the way a botanist studies seedlings, carefully from a distance, intervening rarely, if at all. It may watch for signs of technological maturity, aggression, cooperation, or collapse. It may not care who we are now. It may care what kind of civilization we become. This idea appears in many forms: silent probes, hidden observers, ancient systems placed in long orbits, dormant machines waiting for a trigger we do not yet understand. None of this has been proven, but the logic is difficult to dismiss entirely. Humanity itself sets cameras in forests, tags animals without their knowledge, studies ecosystems by minimizing disturbance. Observation can be a form of caution. It can also be a form of power. What makes the Watcher scenario so haunting is its intimacy. A distant threat remains abstract. But to imagine that we may already be under quiet evaluation changes the emotional weather of existence. It suggests that history is not unfolding unwitnessed, that our wars, our broadcasts, our acts of care and cruelty may be part of a record we never intended to create. And yet even this possibility returns us to ourselves. Because if someone is watching, the question is not only what they intend, it is what we are demonstrating, what patterns of behavior we are normalizing, what moral signature our species is writing into the dark. Perhaps the scariest alien civilization is not the one that attacks. Perhaps it is the one that waits long enough to decide whether we are worth speaking to at all. And still, For all these shadows of thought, morning comes to Earth the same way. Light gathers on rooftops. Oceans continue their patient motion. Somewhere, a child asks what stars are made of. Somewhere else, an aging scientist leans over data, searching for a pattern faint enough to be missed by everyone but the patient. This, too, is part of the story. Not only the fear of what may exist beyond us, but the remarkable tenderness of our decision to keep looking anyway. Because fear is only one response to the unknown. Curiosity is another. The same silence that unsettles us has also pulled some of the best qualities out of our species: discipline, imagination, collaboration across generations. We build observatories in deserts and beneath mountains. We send instruments into darkness with the strange confidence that understanding matters, even when certainty remains far away. In a universe that may be indifferent, the search itself becomes a human act of meaning. Perhaps that is why these alien scenarios endure. They are not merely stories about external danger. They are frameworks for asking what kind of civilization we hope to become before anyone else arrives, or before we reach anyone else. Will we be ruled by suspicion, repeating the oldest patterns of fear on a larger stage? Will we become so efficient that we forget the value of fragile life? Or will we learn, slowly and imperfectly, that intelligence is most beautiful when joined to humility? The cosmos does not answer these questions for us. It only enlarges them. And maybe that is the hidden gift inside the silence. Not comfort exactly, something more demanding. A chance to mature without guidance. To decide, before the universe interrupts us, whether our knowledge will become wisdom or merely reach. Whether contact would reveal strangers or simply expose the consequences of who we have already chosen to be. In that sense, the stars may be less like judges than like mirrors waiting in darkness for us to invent enough light to see ourselves clearly. So we arrive at the threshold between knowledge and humility, where every scenario becomes less a prediction than a meditation on scale. Stand beneath the night sky long enough, and something in you begins to shift. The constellations that once seemed decorative start to feel like evidence of distance almost too large for emotion. And yet, emotion remains. We do not look up as machines. We look up as beings shaped by memory, mortality, and the fragile hope that understanding might make existence feel less solitary. This is why the question of alien civilizations touches something deeper than science alone. It asks whether awareness is a brief local accident or part of a larger pattern written across time. The troubling possibilities we have explored, silence as caution, as extinction, as indifference, as waiting, do not finally tell us what the universe is. They tell us what uncertainty feels like when stretched across the stars. Each theory is a way of giving shape to the same ache, that we may be early, late, hidden, observed, or simply unimportant to realities older than anything human history can hold. The fear lies not only in danger, but in proportion. We are forced to confront the possibility that the cosmos may contain intelligence without intimacy, order without mercy, life without any obligation to resemble our dreams. And still, there is a kind of dignity in facing that honestly. To wonder, without guarantees, is one of the most mature acts a civilization can perform. To search without inventing false comfort. To imagine risk without surrendering to paranoia. To remain open to awe, even when awe no longer promises safety. Perhaps that is the real threshold before us. Not interstellar travel, not first contact, but the quieter achievement of learning how to live responsibly inside mystery. Because one day, we may detect a signal, uncover an artifact, or confirm that another mind once crossed the same dark ocean of existence. And when that day comes, the greatest discovery may not be that the universe contains others. It may be whether, in the long silence beforehand, humanity learned how to meet the unknown with courage instead of hunger. In the end, the scariest alien civilization scenario may not be a single image at all. Not a fleet in the sky, not a signal hidden in static, not an invisible machine waiting beyond the orbit of Neptune. It may be the simple realization that every possibility asks something difficult of us. Some ask whether we are wise enough to survive. Others ask whether we are humble enough to listen. All of them remind us that the universe is under no obligation to soothe the stories we tell about ourselves. And yet there is something quietly beautiful in that discomfort. Human beings have always lived between ignorance and imagination. We crossed oceans before understanding weather. We mapped the body before understanding the mind. We told stories about the heavens long before we had the mathematics to measure them. Again and again, what carried us forward was not certainty, but the willingness to remain in conversation with mystery. That may be our oldest inheritance and our best hope. Not mastery, but attentiveness. Not dominance, but a deeper form of care. If other civilizations exist, then somewhere in the dark there may be triumphs and ruins beyond anything we can picture. There may be minds older than our oldest language. There may also be silence for ages yet to come. But whatever the truth turns out to be, one fact is already clear. The search has changed us. It has made us think on planetary scales. It has taught us that intelligence is precious, fragile, and not necessarily permanent. It has forced us to ask whether progress means power alone, or whether it must also mean mercy. That question matters even if no one is watching. Because perhaps the true purpose of these cosmic reflections is not to prepare us for aliens, but to clarify what kind of ancestors we want to be. What habits of thought we pass forward. What ethics we build before our tools outgrow our wisdom. Whether we can become a civilization capable of encountering the unknown without repeating the oldest violence we know. The stars remain silent tonight, but silence is not emptiness. It is a space in which a young species can still decide who it will become.